Hello, my name is Charlotte Dormer, and today I'd like to talk to you about teachers' perceptions of information literacy, with a particular focus on a case study of a primary school in the south of England. Information literacy should be the cornerstone of education, but is it really? Much of the literature suggests that teachers do not have a good understanding of the concept of information literacy at all. Whilst there haven't previously been a great number of studies into teachers' understanding of this topic, those which have existed have shown that teachers' understanding here is pretty poor. McKeever et al. Showed that secondary teachers in Ireland were unfamiliar with the term information literacy, or that they believed that they understood the concepts without actually knowing the name for them. And in a subsequent study, the same team have expanded on this further. A similar picture emerged with Kogan and Matsuku's study of a school in America, with confusion over information literacy terminology masking relatively high levels of information literacy among the teachers there. Where there has been an understanding of information literacy, such as that shown in the studies by Togia et al. And Galli, there has actually been a focus from teachers on the lower level skills within search and retrieval, rather than those higher order critical thinking skills essential to survive in the modern world. Interestingly, there has been an exception to this rule in one study that was found by Takeo, focusing on information literacy in Norway and Hungary, and I want to come back to that later on. And having now looked at the literature, I'd just like to come back round to the study that I've actually completed. So the case study school was a large state-maintained primary school in the south of England with a full-time librarian. It's the largest primary school in the local authority area, with approximately 30 teachers in the school at all stages of their career. I say approximately as there was some changeover in staff over the course of the study, with both outgoing and incoming staff involved in it. The study was undertaken in the summer of 2019, so this was prior to the pandemic, and I used a mixed methodology with an anonymous questionnaire given to the teachers. Interviews were then undertaken with a small number of volunteers that came out with the same sample, which then helped to just flesh out some of the answers that I received from the questionnaires. I wanted to know quite a lot about my case study school, but in the interest of time, most of these questions can be boiled down to the following 4 questions. What do primary school teachers understand by the term information literacy? Do teachers understand the concepts of information literacy under another name? If so, what name? How can we ensure we're talking about the same thing when we talk about information literacy? And how do teachers perceive their own information literacy skills? Just a quick note, I quickly did make the decision to only give teachers the definition of information literacy partway through the survey. The reason for this was that I wanted to know what they already understood about the term, whether they had previous sort of ideas related to the term and whether they actually already knew it. One of the first questions I asked was whether the teachers in the school recognised the term information literacy and, if they did, where they had heard it before. As you can see, the overwhelming majority, i.e. 82%, had not heard it before. Only 18% of teachers in this case study school actually recognise the term information literacy, with only one teacher having heard about it during initial teacher training. This is really concerning whichever way you look at it, as either information literacy isn't taught at all during ITT, or it's taught under a different name indicating a disconnect between the education and information professions. I then asked the teachers how they would rate their understanding of the term, and again, a lot of them rated their understanding very low. I deliberately asked this question very early in the questionnaire as I wanted to make sure that I got their initial perceptions of the term. So 57% of respondents rated their information literacy at 1, i.e. don't understand. None of the teachers actually gave a value higher than 3, so sort of what they considered to be average. Next, I asked the teachers what they thought the term itself actually meant, bearing in mind that I had not given them any priming as to the expected responses. This was an open text question, so I then analysed the themes that came up in the responses to see whether there were any trends. Some responses provided several different themes, some only contained one or two, which is why there appears to be a huge number of responses in this section in relation to the rest of my data. There wasn't really any one clear theme that the majority of teachers recognised, but both finding information and comprehension were themes in about a third of the responses each. I did also notice that 6 responses made specific reference to information technology or computing in a way which suggested there may be some confusion about the term information literacy and the term IT literacy, as in information technology literacy. Bearing in mind that some of the initial perceptions of the term information literacy showed some confusion about the term, I then gave teachers a model definition. In this case, the SILIP Information Literacy Group definition of information literacy from 2018. I then asked them to suggest other terms that they thought might match this definition. Most of the teachers didn't respond to this question, and there could be a wide range of reasons for this, from a lack of time through to a lack of other known terminology for the concept. However, 32% of those who replied to the overall questionnaire suggested the term critical thinking, which is a widely used term within schools. Other suggested terms included information analysis, informed literacy, and education. The questionnaire then moved on to assessing teachers' perceptions of their own information literacy abilities when faced with a question regarding the ability to make balanced judgments about the information they use. Very specific wording taken from the definition that they had literally just looked at. Interestingly, teachers in this case rated their own ability very highly, which does again raise this question of terminology. Surely, if the teachers had such a low understanding of information literacy as they'd identified at the beginning of the questionnaire, they would also have had a low ability to make balanced judgments about the information that they use. Whilst I know that the teachers had told me that they didn't understand the term, it's also really visible in the discrepancy between these two answers. They're almost the complete opposites, which is really, really interesting to see. However, the term information literacy is not the only problem here. I asked teachers to rate their understanding of a range of concepts relating to information literacy, as well as a range of different models on information literacy, and then to identify whether they'd heard the term before and whether they understood what it was. These concepts were drawn from the literature on information literacy and then supplemented with known models of information literacy and a couple of other words that were useful. There was a clear lack of knowledge regarding most of the models of information literacy, and overall generally quite a low level of understanding of the terms. Fake news was obviously well known, and inquiry-based learning and independent learning were also relatively well known, but knowledge quickly dropped off past this point. So where does this leave us overall? This was a study of one primary school in the south of England, and whilst the teachers had come from a wide variety of backgrounds and were at a range of points within their careers, it's simply too small to generalise this further. Teachers in this school didn't understand the term information literacy, and for the most part they just hadn't heard of it before. They often conflated information technology literacy, i.e. IT literacy, and information literacy, which I think is quite understandable given the similarity in the names there. They did exhibit some understanding of information literacy skills, though again not under that name, but it was limited. The findings, however, did generally echo the result of Shannon et al.'s 2019 study of teachers' perceptions of information literacy, specifically referring to secondary teachers in Ireland, and it had quite similar results on the whole. However, as plenty of others have said before me, this really did highlight the need to increase the profile and teaching of information literacy during ITT initial teacher training, and also via CPD. That all having been said, the terminology of information literacy clearly isn't helping. This leads me to something that I think we really need to consider. As Barbara Band said in her 2018 keynote at Lilac, language can be a barrier. The vast majority of studies have highlighted that the terminology was really confusing to teachers and to basically all of those outside of the library profession. The term teachers in my case study school most identified with as a term for information literacy was in fact critical thinking, but there are other terms that we could consider as a possible alternative that are already in use. Thinking about all of that, there is something else that we need to consider. The vast majority of existing studies into teachers' perceptions of information literacy have been undertaken within the English-speaking world, using the term specifically information literacy as a basis. The one study that I found that did not find problems with teachers' understanding of information literacy was TAKO's 2016 study, which actually looked at teachers in Norway and Hungary and used the terms that they use in those countries. Now, the terminology, interestingly, in those countries is quite different. The terms that are used bear much more resemblance to the term information competence rather than information literacy. And I really think that it might be worth exploring in later studies whether the difference in terminology has an effect on people's understanding of it. For example, changing the word literacy to competence could help to differentiate further from IT literacy, which was clearly a problem in my study. Is it time that we all spoke the same language as our fellow educators? Should we change the terminology that we're using to make all of the things that we are doing more accessible to teachers and to other professionals? Should we try and make sure that we get rid of that ambiguity over what information literacy means by using a term that other people can understand? Those are the questions that I think we should be thinking about today.